So best practices. Why do we need best practices, right? So you all maybe have had a look at the specifications one time or another, right? And they are sometimes really a hard read. What we really need is guidance to explain it to people who are not that interested sometimes, but also not that into XBRL as we are, right? So it's really different things like explaining how the specification is meant to be, but the guidance we provide as a best practice board, but also with the contributing groups, is also based on experience, right? There's a lot of programs have been rolled out over the years. We have a lot of experience from how regulators are doing things, how we software developers are doing things, how taxonomy programs are doing things, and there's a lot of interest in rolling XBRL out in other jurisdictions, and then they really can profit from what we've already learned, what we've already done. But in order to do that, we need to put all this in guidance and in best practices. So we really want to make the entrance into XBRL easier based on all the experience we have made in the last, for some people, 20 years. For me, not that much. It's really for everyone, right? It's for report preparers, of course. It's for data collectors. It's for taxonomy architects. And I think they're also really valuable sometimes in discussions with auditors, right? So they have an opinion, but then you can say, hey, here's the guidance. It says it's supposed to be like this. So that's also something, at least, that we use a lot. On the next slide, there's a small QR code in the corner if you're interested in the link. We have a lot of guidance and best practices on XBRL International. There's something for every topic. It's sometimes hard to find the right guidance in the right topic, but there's a little search function on the side that makes it easier to find what you are looking for. In general, we cover topics like taxonomy design, report creation, and program management, the latter being, for example, the programs from regulators, how they approach rolling out new XBRL requirements to their jurisdictions. So on the next slide, we can then see the overall governance setup of XBRL International. I don't want to waste too much time because we have a lot of ground to cover, but in essence, the XBRL Board of Directors appoints people to the Best Practice Board, and then the Best Practice Board has 4 key areas which we need to do. It's creation and also dissolution of working groups and task forces. Some of them can be temporary, but right now we don't have any temporary group, I believe. We oversee the creation and the creation of guidance. Sometimes we also give input to the groups, but the groups also have their own backlog of things that they want to do. On Tuesday, we had a meeting with the Best Practice Board to brainstorm what we want to do in the future, right? Because there is gaps in the guidance that we, of course, want to fill, either by preparing guidance ourselves within the Best Practice Board, but also in collaboration with the contributing groups. Then, of course, all the content that is being produced is put in front of the Best Practice Board. We approve the work progress, so there's an outline first, and then there's a progress in the document, and of course in the end we also can approve the release of this guidance. And then the working groups and task forces. On the next slide we can see the 3 groups that we currently have. It's the Taxonomy Design Working Group, which provides guidance on how to design taxonomies and architectural approaches for these taxonomies. Then we have the Entity-Specific Disclosure Task Force, which focuses on entity-specific disclosures. That is, for example, the ESEF requirement, but not only. Also in the US, we have some entity-specific disclosures, how we should structure them, and what can we learn from these disclosures. And then relatively new is the Implementation Awareness Task Force, which is tasked with raising awareness of XBRL, right? So because there's often problems also within our company that don't have anything to do with XBRL, but where I also think like XBRL is really the solution to this problem, right? And XBRL is not a really widely known standard, so what we really have to do is raise the awareness of what XBRL can do, also make it easier, more accessible for everyone, and that's what this task force is for. I think that covers the introduction. if I'm not mistaken. On the next slide, we already start. Exactly. So what we're going to do today is we have 6 panelists here who are going to show you a few example guidance documents that we have. We're not going to go into details what the documents are. You can check that yourself on xbrl.org. But we're just going to show what we're working on, what we do, small introduction of the challenge, what the guidance says and how this can be solved, and then, of course, the recommendations that we have for these problems. With that, I hand back over to David for the introduction.
Hey, so
speakers.
Next up on our star-studded cast, all the way from Portugal, Mr. Joel Vicente. I'm sure lots of you know Joel. He's been around XBRL even longer than me, and knows lots of things about lots of things. So he's currently working with core filing. He's a CPA, so he knows all about accounting, which I know very little about, and has got a lot of experience in certainly taxonomy design and requirements gathering for projects, and has worked on, I'm guessing, projects in most places in Europe, Joel. And he's going to talk to us about taxonomy packages. And with that, I will hand over the floor. You want the mic?
Do I need a mic? Or you guys can hear me?
You have the mic.
All right. Yeah, okay. So, I'm not sure if this is working. Okay, it is. So how do you push this? Okay. So yeah, well, Janis and David already said a lot of the purpose of this session. I'm representing the Taxonomy Design Working Group, used to be a task force. And I'm not sure how long, I don't know, maybe 15 years or something like that. I've been part of the Taxonomy Design Working Group. As Dave was saying, I play a lot with the taxonomies, right? It's part of my task at core filing, right? So I travel around the world to kind of help regulators develop their taxonomies, right? And at the Taxonomy Design Working Group, we bring, some of us are from the Taxonomy Design Working Group, and we bring our knowledge to kind of build this guidance that we want to share with you. And I'm not sure how many of you are taxonomy authors, but yeah, like Dave was saying, we just bring some examples of the guidance we write. This one is around the taxonomy package. And I want to kind of call your attention how important it is for you to release your taxonomies. If you are a taxonomy author, you are creating taxonomies, how important it is to kind of create or deliver your taxonomy within a taxonomy package, right? So as you can see, if you download these taxonomies, in this case I have the Dutch taxonomy, and our Dutch friends are doing quite a good job on these taxonomies, right? And they release it as a taxonomy package. But if you open this zip file, right, which is the taxonomy that KiwiKey made available, right? It looks like that, right? All the files, and you don't know if you are new to, especially if you are new to XBRL, you don't know where to start, right? You have multiple files, right? And you know there's a lot of links between all these files, because you know you're bringing all that connections and link bases, right? And probably, yeah, some of you are aware, right? But you don't know where is the entry point for this taxonomy, right? So if you release it as a taxonomy package, right, and using all kinds of software that are certified by XBRL International, this is an example of our tool. SpiderMonkey is a taxonomy editor, right? It will look like this, right? If you release your taxonomy package properly, and again, I forgot to talk about it, but there is a specification, taxonomy spec. I'm not sure which version it is at the moment, but it's out there. So you use it and you kind of release your taxonomies in this way, right? So it's kind of easy to see your entry points, right? And you have 3 different entry points. I don't know much about this taxonomy, to be honest, right? But this was just to kind of show you the examples, right? Now, when you don't have a taxonomy package, right? This is the message you get, or this is the difficulties you will have, right? I think there's no one here from SEC, right? But this is an SEC taxonomy, right? I'm not sure if it was one of my tasks at the Taxonomy Design Working Group to send them an email and ask them, please, this is not a taxonomy package, right? And it's going to be difficult, right, to kind of start working with this taxonomy. So yeah, and to kind of summarizing it, right? These are the reasons you should look at the taxonomy specifications, right? Release your taxonomy as a taxonomy package, right? So that you are helping basically users on how to start it, right? There is also, I didn't mention it, one of the features of this taxonomy package allow you to kind of work offline, right? So you don't have to be connected to the internet. And yeah, basically it gives a better user experience. And I think, yeah, and that's our call for action, right? So publish all your taxonomy package, all your taxonomies as package. That's it. If you have any questions, you can kind of grab me at the end. And
yeah, if anybody has any questions for Joel on taxonomy packages. Okay. Revity's there before me. Okay, yeah, we got the mic.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation. It totally makes sense to make such packages, of course. I have a question regarding the taxonomy package that the EBA releases, where they prepare their package to include the data point model that is necessary for the way they want to have companies use XBRL CSV. Maybe it's me, but in the package there are all these JSON files that are that show the data point data, but they are not referenced in any entry point files. Is there are you considering that, how they should do that, or is it maybe too specific for the EBA taxonomy so that it's not really something that you're...
Yeah, good question. Good question. To be honest, the EBA taxonomies, I know some of them, yes, they're released as taxonomy package. I noticed already that JSON files, but to be honest, I'm not sure how they link it, but it's probably something that at the working group we kind of need to pay attention, right, and kind of give some help on how, or some guidance on how all these files cross it, right? But there's also some, yeah, EBA and IOPA are some specific cases in terms of taxonomy package because they are bringing all other kind of information, right, specifically with the Euro filing specific files, right? So, but yeah, in terms of JSON, yes, there's no connection that at least that I know, right? So, but yeah, I'll take it as a question for the working group, right? So that we can kind of understand and give help on that front.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for your question.
I have one more question, if that's allowed, or someone else is first.
No, go ahead.
Well, we especially with your colleague Mark, we discussed about taxonomy creators changing their taxonomy without changing the version. There's all kinds of ideas for that where we would have to hash it, and it becomes especially significant when files are signed, because if you sign a document that says that it uses a certain entry point, and that entry point might have changed in between, then how do you know if the taxonomy that you're looking at now is actually the same as the taxonomy where it was made by? Is there any guidance on telling taxonomy creators to not do that, basically?
You are already have, Alex, and it is what Jose is bringing to us in terms of taxonomy versioning, right? So yeah, Jose will talk about it, right? But yeah, something that we are also paying attention in the working group.
Great.
But Jose will tell you more about it.
And that's a great lead-in. The other one, of course, is the D6 group are also looking at this about signatures for taxonomies. So Jose is going to tell us about taxonomies. So Jose is founder of 2H from Mexico. Although I'm not sure where he's living at the moment. I believe he's living in Spain. And they are software provider. They've been providing software for the Mexican Stock Exchange for quite a while and have been pretty successful in South America. And he is well known for his talking XBRL, for those people who remember it from a few years ago. And he's going to tell us about taxonomy versioning. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, that was an excellent question to lead to the next topic, which is that we have to pay really close attention to how we version taxonomies. We know that the best practice is to go through a very well-defined process to put a new version of a taxonomy. It should go through a process that defines a consultation process, to receive feedback from the public, because the idea is to anticipate the best as possible any possible problem that may arise from the taxonomy, even from a mislabeled concept through maybe some error in a formula. Because as we all know, when the taxonomy is out there, everybody will start referring to this taxonomy. But even though all the team involved in the taxonomy definition is very committed, sometimes things can go wrong. And this is when we need to publish a hotfix to the taxonomy. So it is very important that even though a small change occurs and we need to put out there a hotfix publication, we need to make sure that this hotfix is identified uniquely. So there are very things that we need to take care of when this kind of unfortunate scenario appears, okay? So these bug fixes are important because obviously they are addressing something that maybe some regulation change happened, or later feedback that we receive require updating some files on the taxonomy. If we publish the new hotfix, and even though we are using taxonomy packages and identifying properly that the version changed, but we don't change the actual URL where the resources are located, it's really difficult for preparers to identify if they are using the previous version or the updated one. And actually, if you look at an instance document that was prepared previously or before the publication of the hotfix and an updated one, it's really hard to tell the difference because the URL for the entry point remains the same. So the best practice here, how to deal with this hotfix version is, as Joel mentioned, it is crucial to identify the version of the taxonomy using taxonomy packages. In this quick sample that we're going to see, this comes actually from the IOPA taxonomy. They did a great job putting out there the changes and communicating that the hotfix was needed. But as I just mentioned, the files were overwritten on the previous location of the taxonomy. So even though the taxonomy package clear states that something happened or was updated, and in there they communicate exactly what was changed, because of the URL was preserved, it is really tough to decide if some document was created before the publish of the hotfix or after the publication of the hotfix. So in short, the main key takeaway here is that we need to version each taxonomy release uniquely. Not only take care of the communication, which is obviously really important, also publish it through a taxonomy package, clearly identifying the version, but also to update the URL where the taxonomy is being published, so we get rid of any possible misuse of the taxonomy, and for preparers to be able to identify that they are actually using the updated version. So that's all on my part.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions quickly? Otherwise, we can take them at the end. That might be a good idea.
Sorry.
So next up on our list is Louis Matherne, who I think of as Mr. Fasby, who leads up...
Don't say that too loudly.
Okay, I'll not mention it again. Who leads up the development of US GAAP taxonomies, obviously. And I guess you've been there for a while?
A few years.
A few years. So Louis is going to talk to us about common practice reporting, what that means, and why it's useful and why we should think about it and why we should follow it.
Thank you. So I chair the Entity-Specific Disclosure Task Force, and our primary responsibility is to identify mechanisms to minimize the need for extensions, as well as to identify anchoring mechanisms for extensions that do occur, which they do in an open reporting environment. And so, a good example of an anchoring mechanism, as is used in Europe with ESMA, is the wider narrower arc rule. So that's the primary charge for the task force, but we do a lot of other things around that. The common reporting, the common practice reporting, CPR, is one aspect of that, and this is not cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It is common practice reporting. And so CPR is information that entities provide that is often a tweak on something that is required to be disclosed, but they've got a subtly different way of reporting it. Right, so I'll give you a simple example. If you've got, you have an element in your taxonomy for revenue, and let's just say that's the only one you have, and your reporting regime permits them to extend, they may have hotel revenue and they think they need to call that out. And so they may extend for that. And if enough filers do that, that now becomes a common practice. And so we try to identify those. And the reason this matters is if there's enough volume around this, there's enough activity, enough filers reporting hotel revenue, then it might be in our best interest to include that in the taxonomy. So that's what I want to explore a little bit. So, the first and most important aspect of dealing with CPR elements is to make sure that they are, anything that you're considering including, that they're consistent with the reporting standards and existing or intended modeling. So you don't want to, one of the things we would never do is include an element, a new concept in the taxonomy that is contrary to GAAP, right? So maybe it's commonly reported, but if we don't see it as being consistent with GAAP, we would not be including it. We also don't anticipate future accounting standards. It has to stand on its own within the context of what we presently have as requirements, so we can't anticipate. And then the frequency and industry focus. I mentioned frequency a moment ago. You have to look at that in the context of any given industry. So if you've got an industry that's made up of just 12 companies, your threshold for including a common practice reporting element is much lower than if it's happening across several thousand companies. And so that's something we would take into account. And then we don't really want to be beholden to special interest. Every now and again, we'll get a request to add something or include something because somebody thinks it's important to have it. If it doesn't meet our other tests for inclusion, we're not going to include it in the taxonomy. So, there clearly are benefits to including these elements, but there are also downsides. So the best practice for including common practice reporting elements. These are just some suggestions. Every reporting regime has some different considerations, but in our framework, in the US GAAP framework, we want to include it in the same relation tree hierarchy as related concepts. This is also contained within the documents that we've published on the ESD task force. So we think it's best to include it with the related concepts. So again, if we included in my revenue example, if we included a hotel revenue example as a common practice reporting element, we would include it alongside the revenue element. That makes it easier for folks to find it. The downside is that they might be more inclined to use it. And so some have argued that they really should be partitioned off somewhere. But I think at the end of the day, it's better to include it with the similar elements. Includes CPR dimensions for a breakdown that becomes common in practice. So one of the things that our documents cover is the fact that the cube and the related dimensions is really, we don't describe it this way, but it's a built-in mechanism for effectively anchoring CPR elements, that being the member, right? So this is built into the base taxonomies, and we use it all the time on so many of our disclosures, like segments and so forth. And so if you have something that filers are going to report as a known CPR element, including them as a dimension or maybe an extensible enumeration is a good way to handle that. And that leads me to the next point, which is consider including properties that can be used to provide additional metadata. So things like extensible enumeration values is another way to do that. That's another list of concepts that it can cover the existing items, but it can also cover potential extensions that become a part of that family, part of that domain of concepts. And then we also apply unique reference roles. So both the US GAAP taxonomy and the IFRS taxonomies, as examples, include unique reference roles that distinguish between common practice concepts and those that are disclosure concept are required by the underlying disclosure. And so that's another way to help distinguish between those CPR elements and those that are more explicitly linked to the disclosures. So these are some of the expected benefits. We believe it improves comparability. If you've got 1,000 filers that have been extending on a concept, it's best to include that in the base taxonomy because now we've got an agreed upon definition for what that thing is. And we also have the same element name. So now from a comparison point of view where you're doing mass consumption of the data, it's much easier to recognize what that thing is. This will also, by definition, reduce the number of extensions from these common practice reporting concepts because now you've included it in the base taxonomy. And it's more likely that reporting entities will now find the appropriate selection because you've included it in the taxonomy. And it should provide data users with fewer extensions so they've got better semantics and increased consistency. So I'm going to go through a fairly simple use case here. This is an example. This one's actually a little dated, but it was one of the easiest ones I had at hand, and it illustrates the point well. So this was a lease case study, the new leasing standards that we put out back in 2018-19 timeframe. And after it was put out, we had requests both from our board to do an analysis on how it was being utilized, how the standard was being implemented. And we also had a common practice review feedback from XBRL US DQC on highly used extensions. And so we looked at a variety of disclosures in the leasing area. And this is just a simple summary of some of the things we found. I'm going to look over here so I can read. But the first column, so these are just this is the name of some of the extensions that we found. Now again, I'm not going through the mechanical operation of how we found these, but we do a data pull using one or two databases that we have access to, and we identify these extensions, and then we group them based on label names and other associated attributes. And these are the extensions we found. So if you go to the third column, which is filers used extensions, it's the number of extensions we saw against the next column, which is the filers reported related lease info. So just using the first example, payments due in year 6, there were 3,097 filers and 290 had extensions, so about 9%. And the next one, the remaining lease terms, was about 31%. And so I'm going to use that second one as an example to walk through. And so I cannot read that from here. But so the filers, so what happened here for their lease terms, we've got remaining lease terms between 4th and 7th year. So to capture that information, the filer used the range axes, and they used the minimum and the maximum, which is member, which is really rather confusing for this bit of information. And this is just another example of the same thing. And so when we looked at this, and we brought this to our taxonomy advisory group for discussion, our first option here was to create a common practice element for the remaining lease term. So this would be an element. It would be a duration element. So it would be looking for a date. And that we thought would probably be better than the range axes. The alternative was to allow them to continue extending and provide some guidance to inhibit use of the weighted average remaining lease term using the range axes. But at the end of the day, option 1 won out. And so under option 1, we actually added a couple of elements to the taxonomy. And those elements were duration type elements looking for a specific date. And so I'll just read one of the definitions here. So it's a duration item type and the remaining lease term of operating lease using the duration date format. So as an example, P1, Y5, M3D, and that represented a fact of 1 year, 5 months, and 13 days. So M13D, 13 days. And so a user of the data can consume that very readily, right? You've got an element now that gives you, tells you exactly what it is. The type constrains it to a certain type of value, a date value, and on consumption, you know exactly what to do with that. And so that's it. So that's the sort of stuff we do on the ESD task force. I'll pass it over.
Thank you very much for that. So next up we have Catalina, who is also from Matherne, and she is very active in their consulting group, helping customers extend, build, file, as well as being active in, I believe, XBRL Germany, in the working groups there. And is also pretty active in the BPB because she's got lots of things to tell us today. So I am going to let her tell us all these good things. Thank you.
Thank you. So I hope you have seen this brochure here. And because there is here the information about our working groups and our call for new members. I am the chair of the International Awareness Task Force. And our main task is to make XBRL more consumable, more understandable, that everyone can, that we talk at the same language, so to say, and just bring it a little bit, the language down to a normal language. I take this for me as well, because I am not coming from a technical. My background is not technical, so for me, starting in XBRL was tough and difficult, and I spent a lot of hours understanding everything. So I just wish to change that for that. And we have a lot of guidance out there that explained a lot, but we are trying to make this guidance more easier and consumable for everyone. That's why we are making some webinars for members first, but then we have also these videos online for everyone. So for example, we had made a webinar about versioning in the last month, and so if there's any question about it, you can just go and watch this webinar. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 guidance. First about the labels, then about the impact of changing calculation from calculation 1.0 to calculation 1.1, and then about a problem that we this morning talk about it with Patrick, the Campbell, and it was about what are we going to do when we have one report with different taxonomies, and we have as well a guidance that is a draft on that. So let me begin with the guidance about labels. Labels are really important for taxonomy, and this guidance is for taxonomy architectures and taxonomy authors, and is therefore be aware that labels are important to make the taxonomy can be understandable not only for machines but also for humans, for people, and also the importance of how the role of the standard label, what is this standard label doing. So something that we can see or that the users of the taxonomies are a problem that we see with labels is if this standard label is too long, it's difficult to consume for the humans, and this is the task of the labels, right? That as I just talked. So maybe this is nothing that is a problem that seems to be trivial, but it's not. I just want to show you some examples of that. So we have here the Lucanet XBRL auditor, and can I point it here? So we see here, this is a standard label for a taxonomy, and I cannot really consume this label, it's just too long, right? I have another example here with, This is the same label, but coming from our Lucanet XBRL tagger, so we also don't see here, what is it, the label here, right? You cannot read it. It is possible to extend this and read what is this about, this label here, but it takes time, right? So it's not really practical. And we have even another example from Iris that we see exactly the same problem here, right? And here as well. So there are other ways to put if the taxonomy authors wants or wish to have this long label, you can put that in a documentation label, right? Not in the standard one. So and this is really good to have it. This different type of labels, and yeah, and this is possible, as we see here in another taxonomy, that we have here our standard label is really short, you see. Then we have one documentation label where I can go and see the details of this concept of our taxonomy. So we have some good examples of that. So what we prefer, or the guidance says, is that the standard labels should be useful, role independent, consistent, and consist, and not long, right? So, and if you want to add it a long one, we prefer to go with this short label plus a documentation label. Okay, this is just something that impacts the way the users are tagging the report or the auditors are seeing the report. So the call of action is use the standard labels and place explanation on the documentation label, not on the standard label. Okay, let me switch to the next topic, that is calculation 1.1. And we say switch to calculation 1.1 and get rid of the noise, right? Because calculation 1.0 had some issues with rounding. And so in some of the reports, the companies are rounding the numbers, and this causes some false positive when we validate the reports. And this noise is causing that we don't see the actual errors that we have in this report. So that's why the switching of the calculations makes sense. So I think I have here an example, okay? So you see these rounding numbers here, and then you see, yeah, of course, this doesn't. If you do add up these numbers, you don't get the number that it says. But if we know that this is a rounding issue, that we know, okay, that's the case. So if I show you here in a tool for auditing, we see that noise. Yeah, so this is a report that we have with calculation 1.0, and we see this couple of messages here, and then we see also in our table view as well some warnings here, and on our table. And if I switch to calculation 1. I can also see it here in this table view. Wait, it's not working. But here is just if you take the same report and just put calculation 1.1, then all this noise, all these errors are gone. And if we have here a real error, we will see it, right? This is just kind of magic that we can just do switching the calculation specification. And yeah, it's good. And so Revity took a sample of reports and make this analysis. So it's worthy or not to do the switch. And you can see the results here, like the inconsistency if you use 1.0 or 1.1. And this is something that says a lot, right? And then we have less inconsistencies, and then we understand better the results and the data that we have in XBRL. If there is a session today about calculation, so if you have, this is a really technical issue, so if you have questions about it, I just recommend to go to that session with Alex later. And so the call of action here is define calculation 3 with calculation 1.1, relation in the taxonomy, and enforce calculation 1.1 validation through filing rules, right? We also had yesterday a presentation from Anton from the audit community, and we know that there are some issues with the RTLs, but this calculation was not included there, so there are some issues to apply it, but if we do, we will have less inconsistencies and noise. Okay, I am coming to my next last topic, and this is about, again, something that we are going to facing more and more, because we not only because of the fact that we will have a combination of non-financial data and financial data in our report. This is a fact. This is also because this is something that is included also in the legislation, right? So we need to have one report, one management report in the future. And I really hope that digital part of ESRS pass soon, that we can have that. But then the problem is, or of the challenges that we have if we have a single report is we will have multiple data collectors, yeah, it could be. We have different report requirements coming from different background, different laws. Of course, different taxonomies and different filing rules, right? So if you combine this challenge in a single report, then yeah, so what can we do there? So in this guidance, we explore, or the taxonomy design group explore, this is a draft guidance, so that means that you have the opportunity to contribute, and we are open to, I say we are open because I am also part of this group, so I'm working on that as well. So you can also contribute into if some taxonomy architect or taxonomy designer has some points on there we can also consider those. So the taxonomy, the XBRL specification provides different solution for this challenge and for this problem. So we have one that's the separate documents for each taxonomist. This is the not do anything option, not do anything. So it's just how it is. We have different taxonomies. Then you see the yellow arrow conducts to different XBRL reports, right? We have different documents that we have. And then we have at the end, with the blue arrow, different outputs in XBRL, right? Different conversions. But I think this is not the case that is going to be, like, is not in the legislation. We know that, at least for Europe, we need one management report, right? So, but this is what we have right now, right? Not do anything. Then we have the second option, that is multiple taxonomy references. So we have different taxonomies here, and we just put all of them in one report, and then there is one conversion on iXBRL. So we have one set of data to give to our authorities or to give to our analysts. Then we have another option that calls multiple tagger documents. That means we have different taxonomies, one document, but we can produce different iXBRL reports with different set of data, different references of the taxonomy. And this is also possible to do with our XBRL specifications. And we have another option that is the unified extension one. We have in this one a little bit more work on the taxonomy authors and on the authorities, yes. And we have on the top the taxonomies that you see here, but then we have a unified taxonomy of those three that we have here. Then we see the yellow arrow, and then we have one report. That's what the legislation is asking in Europe, right? One report, and then we have one data sets and one conversion, right? This is, I think, the option that the working group and the guidance says that is the best option to do. But all of these four options are there and are possible and not wrong. Just the best one that the guidance says is that this is going to be the best one for the users, right? Less effort to tag and to consume the data as well, because we have just one document, one taxonomy, and one output, right? And but if this is not possible, then the other possibilities are around. So let's see if this works with clicking here. Is not. This is a video. Yeah, so this is just use case of having 3 taxonomies on our report, our tool to tagging, and how you need to tag, right? If you have the SF taxonomy and you want to tag, then yeah, you tag that, right? But then if you Want to also, you can search in the taxonomy as well, and you will find it, but we are on the SF taxonomy here, so I can search of name of reporting entity, but let's say I want also to tag as well here a table, so it's also possible to do, so I can tag an element here, look for my element and concept in the taxonomy, tag the table. That's good. So but remember we are just in one taxonomy here. So that's. But what we are going to see is that if I want to switch into the taxonomies, then I will need to switch as well the tab here, right? Yeah, and this is something that that is just taking time to the user. Yeah, if I want to have a look or search for an item that is in another taxonomy, then I need to change the tab, and it's a little bit confusing for the users and time-consuming for the users. So that's why I also think that this unified extension taxonomy is a better option, right? Like we are right now in the order. We want to tag here some ESRS, and then if I need to change, right, to change the taxonomy, and then I have other folders there. And yeah, so it's kind of time consuming and a little bit of the users doing this all the time. It's possible, yeah, we can do that. We can load 3 taxonomies, but I think if we just have one, it will be our users consumers of the data will have it easy to tag there. Okay, I think yeah, that's video is a little bit long, maybe 30 seconds more, but this is just how the users are using the tool. Okay, that's it from my side.
Right, I'll go.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the
Thank you very much. That's an interesting and not an obvious subject for people to think about, how to combine their taxonomies. So next up we have Campbell Pryde, who is also international, all the way from New Zealand via the US. So we have a very international panel. He is currently CEO, I believe, of XBRL US, and is heavily involved in looking at the US reporting and analysis, and he's going to talk to us about quality and quality rules.
Right. Can we turn the mic on? Is that, there you go. That's working? Okay, so I'm just going to talk about rules that we write. We have a process where we create rules to check filings that have been made both for ESEF and to the SEC. As you can imagine, we've been looking at this data for a long time, and there is a lot of problems in a lot of this data. And just to give you an idea, particularly not so much with fixed form filings, but with filings where companies can make extensions. You've got, in the US, for example, you have over 24,000 taxonomies being created by all the filers. These extensions are taxonomies. So as you can imagine, there's likely to be mistakes, and a lot of those mistakes are very common, and the same errors are made. So we identify a lot of problems in filings that are being made. So we have a whole process to try and identify those. And one of the things that we do is then we use that as a basis to create best practice. So there's a lot of best practice that needs to be made. There's a lot of questions. Everyone thinks they know what they're doing, but everyone does everything different, but they all know what they're doing. So what we're trying to do is trying to take the shit show of mess and try and get everyone to do it the same and try and get it in a consistent way. So we have a process where that we use to create rules so that we can make sure that filers know what they're doing, and so we can push best practice out to people as they're creating their filings in real time. So that's what this thing called what business rules do. This is not XBRL formula. These rules are very, very specific. And one of the problems with XBRL formula, which we're trying to address in the spec as well, is the ability to query taxonomies, understand what the taxonomy is doing. And you have to do that in real time, because it's not like the taxonomy is being published and it's out there. You're getting a taxonomy that's created by the filer. You have to analyze it, you have to check it, see what's wrong with it, and then make sure it conforms to best practice. So we have written a number of rules. We've written rules for SEC filings. We've written rules for ESEF filings. There's also a number of different types of disclosures that are being made in the US, which we have rules for as well, which includes things like proxy, employment benefit plans, compensation disclosures. So we're creating rules as we see problems in filings and as data users contact us and say, what's going on here? We can't use this data. Then we'll put business rules in. So one of the things, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later today on the metadata taxonomy, is one of the problems with writing business rules, it can be, there's a lot to look at, and as you know, in many of these taxonomies, there's thousands and thousands of elements, and you can't really create a rule around every single element. So the couple of things we're working on, and we want to make sure if you're creating business rules, try and write those business rules using metadata from the taxonomy. You don't really want to write business rules and start listing out elements in any business rule you're creating. That creates problems when the next taxonomy release comes up. You create like a maintenance nightmare for yourself. So that's one thing that's important. The taxonomy design should support validation of data. If you're building taxonomies, base taxonomies, you want to put in as much information in there as possible. The more information you put in there, the more useful that can be. One of the things that we've been talking about, particularly in the US, is things like Boolean values. Having Boolean values and having that reported, like what accounting standard are you using? If you don't know the accounting standard that you're using, then it makes it very difficult to write rules. So having additional information in the taxonomy, the regulators may not require it, but having it there, at least it opens up the pathway so that business rules can be written. Or you can write business rules that say, hey, you should probably disclose, what accounting standard you're using in your disclosure. And rule development should be done as part of the taxonomy development process. We work very closely with the FASB, we work with IFRS as well, and put like a lot of comments in to make sure that, okay, if you're doing this, this has an implication. It would be much easier to validate this data if things are structured this way. What we do is we associate rules with a given taxonomy release. So in the past, there's been, we've got this one set of rules, we're going to write these rules, and those rules stay static and different taxonomies release. You kind of have to have those rules associated with each taxonomy. Things are constantly changing the taxonomy, and so you really want rules to match that. That also has the advantage that if you're creating a taxonomy, you expect users to use it in a certain way, then you can have business rules that support it to make sure that it actually works in the way you expect. And the last thing we have is eliminate the business logic in the rule. You want the rule to be kind of as neutral as possible and have as much business logic as possible in the taxonomy. Then it's a central store of what all the information about the domain is. Once you start to put business logic into the rules, you've got two places where the business logic is. You want to try and avoid that. There has been a tendency to try and, all this information gets sprinkled all over the place. So that makes it very difficult for a user. If you know one place to go, get what the business logic is, that makes everything a lot simpler. So I'm just going to do a walkthrough of very, very quickly. I know we're running out of time, but for negative rules, we have this. One of the problems with negative rules is that it sounds simple. This value can't be negative. Assets can't be negative, except when it can. So this is a little bit more complicated. It sounds simple, but it's a little more complicated. There's reasons a lot of things can be negative. Things like, it's an adjustment, so they might have a member with an adjustment on it, so then it can be negative. Or there may be, if it's an accrual amount, expect depreciation expense to be positive all the time, but we over accrued in one period, now we're reversing it. Reversals are very, very common. So when you're writing these rules, they're a little bit more complicated than you expect. So one of the things that you need to do when designing business rules is have a very good knowledge of the domain. And I think this is imperative, and there's disagreement on this, but I think it's very, very, very essential that if you have a business rule, you should try and write them in a way that it's only telling you something which you know 100% is incorrect. If you're doing, there tends to be a tendency, we'll write this business rule, it's going to get some false positives, but then people can go through, they can look at those, and then they can check and if they're okay. So we try to avoid that at all possible costs, because once you start having a list of, these could be wrong, so you should go and check them, and you'll get a list of, 1,000 items. No one's going to check any of them. So effectively, the use of the business rules becomes irrelevant. So don't do that. something like this negative rule, one of the things we do is we try and write that to be as accurate as possible. And so this is just an example, but of the things in the rule, and this just kind of shows you how it works and an example of how you can incorporate the information of the taxonomy. I know this looks complicated, but you see the thing in orange saying constant. And so what we're trying to say here is, if you use this, what this is saying is, if you use this axis, this value can be negative, because we know that. And so and you see this navigate. What that means is that's this kind of the business rule logic that we use. That's saying go to the taxonomy, look at the relationships in the taxonomy, and we go and get the axes that are defined in the taxonomy that meet this set of criteria. And so what that does is then it'll pull back, okay, these are the axes, we know these can be negative. In the US GAAP taxonomy, they define what the axes are, where the values can be negative. So we're just going and reading the taxonomy, getting those axes, and then if we've got assets, and if the value's on that axis, then we're going to say, no, it's negative, that's okay, move on. And you can see it's looking at the DQC rules, and that's pointing to the FASB website. So that's kind of the takeaway from this. If you're writing business rules, just remember those things. Try and put as much information in the taxonomy as possible. Don't put the business logic in the rules. Try and write rules that don't give false positives if you possibly can. Keep them up to date with the taxonomies. Try and make them as maintainable as possible by keeping the rules just really looking into the sources for information. Don't put content or business rules. The logic into the business rule. So that's all I have. So I'll hand it over to our next speaker.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Shraddha Bagul, who's going to talk to us about testing.
Okay, hello, good morning everybody. I think we are short of time, just 5-7 minutes remaining.
You've got time, take time.
All right, fine. So I think the next topic that we would like to present is on the filing for test services, which has been there, like for most of the regions, every regulator has been adopting this. But what are the things that we need to, see here or look forward, like why we need the test services facility, for the issuers, for the software vendors, and also for the regulators. So I think the best practice board has been decided, they have been working on why we need the test services facility. As we see that the regulatory compliance reporting has been increasing so far, right? And we need a validity or the validation check has to be there, like how the filings will go, whether there will be errors found, how to correct that errors well in time before the mandate kicks in. So few of the things that we would like to focus more on the three different perspectives. One is from the stakeholders, like the entities, why it is important and what will make a difference if they have the test facilities. The second is the software vendors and also the regulators. So we'll just touch base on the three major pointers here. So what will happen in case of the issuers? So whenever a new mandate kicks in, right, every issuer is very much, I would say, not that comfortable with the filing, right? So they need a kind of a validation check or a kind of thing, okay, my filing is error-free or error-prone. Their compliance has been fully met. If the regulator allows a kind of a test facility, it builds a confidence and the filing may go through well in time, right? From the issuer perspective, it is also important that they are well prepared in advance. They know the validation checks, what checks needs to be inbuilt in the taxonomy from the compliance perspective. And also, it will be error-free. The second important thing is from the software vendors. So as we know, we deal with multiple software vendors. So every software that has been there has to know the regulatory compliance well in advance. What validation checks will go in, whether the filing is valid, or what are the things that need to update their system based on the different regulatory compliance that are there. So if this facility is given well in time, and the software vendors can also enhance their tools to make it compliant more easy and more error-free and more smooth in the process of reporting. The most concern is on the regulators, because there are few regulators who has opened their platforms for the test filing, but it is a request for all the regulators to make the filing mandate successful in the ongoing implementation. If they come up with a facility of test filing, both for the developers, like the software vendors, and for the issuers, it will be very helpful for them to go through the filing in much more smoother manner. So there are few of the regulators who have already done this. If I just take an example of UK, in UK, they have been already provided few test facilities for the developers as well as for the entities. So this allows a very kind of a easy process. You can check your filings well before in advance. If there are any corrections to be made for the live filing, that can be done well in time. And also one of the implementation in the ESMA as well. I think ESMA, we know that different regions follow different mandates. There are certain countries which have specific local jurisdiction reporting. So if these facilities are provided well in advance, it will make the life of issuers very easy, and the filings will be more smooth and they will be ready to comply in a much more faster way. So I think that's the call for action, that the test services facility should be provided not only for the issuers but also for the software vendors, so that they can enhance their systems well ahead of time and complying with the different regulatory reportings in space. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Janis. I would like to join with everybody in a big hand for all our speakers and thank them for their views. I think it's been very informative. I think there's another slide after that. I think there is.
It's your presentation.
It's not my presentation. This is the important one. No one gets out of the room until they've signed up. A call to join. Would you like to say a few words?
So, Catalina is already showing the leaflet, right? It's lying around here in certain places. So if you think like this is something for you, XBRL has this unique opportunity that you can really directly contribute, both to the technical part for the specifications, but also for what we're doing here, right? Guidance, practices. If you have experience with these things, and you can contribute, but also you don't need to have experience. If you come maybe from another jurisdiction, then we have a lot here, right? But everybody who wants to contribute, both in the groups, but also in the best practice board itself, are very, very welcome. In the leaflets you can find how you can apply, but you can also just contact us directly, and we can lead the way. Also, if you look at the guidance and you identify gaps, something where you think we really should put out something that would help you understand a certain aspect or that would clarify something, also just let us know, right? We're really grateful for every feedback. And also, please join us. We're always looking for more people.
Thank you very much. We have 1 minute left. Great timekeeping. So any questions for any of the panelists? I realize that we're stopping you from lunch. No? Anybody? Anybody? Yes. That man again.
Thank you. Yeah, I have lots of questions, but I will keep it with one. Thank you for all your presentations. It's very clear, and it's very good work that you're doing, I think. To pick one of the questions out, maybe to Catalina, you talked about multiple taxonomies in one report, and I understand that it's very good to create just one taxonomy for everything that you want to have tagged, but of course it's very difficult to get all those jurisdictions aligned. If we look at the multi-target documents, there's quite some implications there for linking data between the different concepts for the different targets. Do you think we should focus more on making it able to link between different target documents, or is it better to pursue getting one taxonomy for one report?
Thank you for the question. So one of the topics of the guidance is regarding overlapping of data, right? And the guidance provides or suggests 3 options. We can just tell the people what not to tag, like with these interoperability working groups, yeah? So we choose one of the concepts. We can tag both, yeah? We will have the overlapping, or we can go with the extension that create a new element of both if we have, right? So there are options. But I understand your concern that it's, and I see that coming with ESRS, GRI, and ISB, right? We have 3 different standards. But Patrick Campbell said today on the presentation that he believes at least that ESRS is covering the other 2, right? So, but yeah, we are aware of this is one of the challenges that we are facing, and unified taxonomy extension is the best option covering, solving also this issue with overlapping. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so.
You have to turn up otherwise. You have to turn up to the group.
Yeah,
Might be
please
a good idea,
join, please.
Then you will sort it out. Okay, if there are no more questions, once again, thank you to everybody. Thank you all to our speakers. And at this point, we will break for lunch, and we will be back again with the more technical sessions. Thank you.